to welcome in Isaiah and Jose from the band He Kindly. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Oh, man, we're stoked to have you here. We know we got mutual connection through all types of bands in the scene, and it's really good to have another arm of the entity come in and be known.
Yeah.
We're happy to be part of the big community octopus that we have around here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we got like some nautical thing around here. We are like a community octopus, I think.
It does seem like that, yeah.
Spreading from here to Tampa and beyond. So I know you guys have, I want to get into the He Kindly story, but I know you guys each have your own little bit of backstory that I kind of want to get into because I had done a little bit of research on your music and everything, and we had met at the Shy Blossom EP release. So I knew some of the things I wanted to ask about and generally what I wanted to talk about, but then I got the email this morning with your individual little backgrounds that you had provided for me, and that opened up a whole nother set of things I'm curious about. So I would like to start with you, Isaiah, if I can.
Yeah.
And you can just give me, if you want to pick up middle school, high school, wherever music starts to come into your life and your passion for things, because I know that it's not just the music. You guys also have a passion for mental well-being and community and all the things that go along with that. And that's a huge thing around here, so I don't want to sweep that under the rug and only talk music. So if you can, just pick me up where you feel like your line starts to start.
So I had possibly the stupidest start to playing guitar, I think, that I've ever heard from anyone.
Love it.
So I was really into Hozier and Nickelback, which one is really good and one is Nickelback.
Good combo.
There you go.
Yeah, it was a funny combo. I used to have like their best of Volume 1 CD, and we would listen to it all the way on the road. I don't know. I just was a big geek about it, and I've grown from that since. But really, I started learning guitar because my sister and I would play Rock Band all the time together, and she was always drums and I was always guitar, and I sucked at Rock Band. Like she would always get excellence and S pluses and stuff like that, and I sucked. I would always have to play on super easy, and she'd always make fun of me. So my journey in guitar started as if I can't play Guitar Hero and I can't play Rock Band, I think I'll just show her by playing a real instrument and being a real person. So that's actually how I started playing guitar. I started when I was in 5th grade.
So pretty early start.
Yeah, a pretty early start.
Really early.
I was always more drawn to songwriting than just, I guess, expertise. Or I guess rather that was my expertise, was songwriting. A lot of the music I actually grew up on was like blues, like Billie Holiday, political music like Rage Against the Machine, Bob Dylan's, these artists that really conveyed so much throughout what they were saying lyrically. That's what I was always been drawn to.
So the story always mattered to you of the song. It wasn't just so much, can I play guitar?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Billie Holiday always makes me cry.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is powerful. Like my first time, I think, so I've grown up as a black and white guy in rural Brooksville. It's predominantly white area, predominantly old area. And the first time it really made sense to me, the impact of being a person of color in a community like that, besides just walking through the community and listening to the stories of some of my relatives and other black folks in the area, was Strange Fruit. Like, it just made sense. Like, we have this tree that has kind of become a symbol of the hatred that Brooksville kind of used to sow in it. Mm-hmm. And Strange Fruit just really made it all connect to me. It made me understand the weight of the horrors that people that look like me face and have faced. And it made sense too why music was the way that I was able to fully grasp that.
That's what I was just going to ask. So music became kind of a vehicle to not only understand it, but a way to kind of exercise some of the new feelings too, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when you first start playing, did you take lessons, or were you just like, I'm just going to pound on this guitar? I mean, how do you go from plastic guitar to real guitar?
So you forget about the buttons. That was the first thing I had to learn pretty quick. and you actually learn how to hold down your hands and hold down notes, which was apparently was a big jump for me.
So did you just go to your parents and you were like, hey, this plastic guitar thing isn't working out for me. Can we get a real one?
So I always lived with just my mom, and literally it was quite literally that. I was like, Mom, Lexi is kicking my ass in Rock Band, and she's saying I'm not pulling my weight. I just scored 25% on Creep on Radiohead, which is like one of the easiest songs.
We're never gonna get anywhere
big
in the rock band space.
Our plastic band is not taking
I
off.
was like, this is horrible. But no, my mom's always been super supportive. Anything
Love that.
that she thought I could throw my weight into, she would always throw her weight into. So,
Love that.
yeah, it was quite easy as being like, Mom, I'm interested in learning guitar. She bought me my first Chinese knockoff guitar. I played it until my fingers bled for like the first 6 months.
Was it one of those classic kid lock yourself in the bedroom type deals?
Yeah. And like try to learn songs that were way outside my wheelhouse, way outside any business I had or working with, just because I was just so excited to be holding something.
So let's kind of do this a little bit different and kind of go parallel. So you're getting to the point where you're just starting to be able to play a song, and you're realizing songwriting is the part that's exciting you most. Mm-hmm. Okay, so start me from your square one and kind of walk me up to the point where you're just starting to get your feet under you, literally and figuratively.
Man, it started just listening to me. I would always just listen to my stepdad's records. He always had Metallica, Iron Maiden, the classic stepdad rock music or metal music. And then starting to branch out, I was getting into like heavier stuff like Slipknot, and then I would go eventually into like Dream Theater and liking more complex music. And around that time, I just always bugged my mom. I was bugging everybody. I was hitting things. I was not aggressively. I was just, drumming on stuff, and I was constantly like showing them like, oh, look at this piece of gear. Look at this piece of gear. I want a drum set so bad. And eventually, I think begrudgingly, they got me a drum set for my birthday in 8th grade. And,
So at that point, you were already listening to like Slipknot and Dream Theater and things like that.
Yes.
So you had a tall mountain of drums in the horizon.
And I did try to tackle it way too early, like he was saying. Like, I was starting with AC/DC, just a simple, like just holding down the steady beat. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. I need to do something else. So then I tried doing Slipknot, and trying to do blast beats when you haven't even gotten the simple, like, rhythmic stuff down is just so... I could just imagine my mom and my stepdad just plugging their ears or trying to leave the house, because it was in my room that we had the drum set.
I was gonna say I had it easy because mine had a headphone amp, so Mom didn't have to listen to me butcher Crazy Train for the 13,000th time.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing with drums. You got to have well understanding parents, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you have any lessons, or was this just straight instinct? Was like, I'm bored, I have to push harder than this?
It was just straight instinct. It was, I would look at people practicing, like Drumeo became a big, like I would just watch Drumeo all the time, and I never had a practice pad, so it was just drumming on a pillow, drumming on the side of my bed, or even just my drum throne had like a little more rebound, so it kind of felt like a snare head kind of.
Yeah.
And I would just do that until it was like 12 in the afternoon, which is when they allowed me to play drums, because then it wasn't so early in the morning. But yeah, I was just doing that, trying to get basic rhythm down. And I only went to music like classes in like senior year of high school, and it was just jazz drumming, like very light. It was stuff that I was pretty much comfortable with at that time.
But it was a matter still of keeping the sword sharp, as it were.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that brings up an interesting question for me. So when you guys are first learning and you don't have like set teachers and you don't have set schedules, as rudimentary stuff, what role did the internet? You mentioned Drumeo, and that's what made me think of it. What role did the internet play in helping you learn your instruments and refine things at this early stage where you're just kind of feeling around in the dark?
So I would say that one thing I had when I was younger, there was this video game called Rocksmith, and it was literally just like the gamified version of Rock Band, where you can actually hook up your guitar and stuff. I thought it was so cool that when my mom got it for me, like I would go into get all the DLC, and at that stage I was still kind of like figuring out even what I really wanted to play on guitar. But it literally would teach you the rudiments, the how to play song for song.
Nice.
I learned my first full song by playing it, and that was "I Hate Everything About You" by 3 Days Grace. So it was really, really weird. And then like there were like online features, so me and my friend would play online with each other and be able to do that like across like that.
That's crazy.
But I was gonna say, besides that, like again, Hozier really got me into music itself, and one of the real reasons that I really got into it was his music video. And the music video for "Take Me to Church" is a very evocative story of queer love, where there's like protests against this queer couple, and the imagery in it was so striking and so vivid and so visceral and so real, so understandable,
Right.
that it brought a new level to what he was saying and lyrically. And I started finding a lot more artists that had that same thing, so that like internet craze of like music videos, and the way that communities interact with music videos and interact with lyrics and music itself is really special to me.
So the accessibility of things was a factor.
Yes.
And what about you? I'm sure it was some of that for you too, just music constantly on tap.
Yeah, it was music it was Spotify on rotation. The bus rides to school in the morning when everyone's like really quiet on the bus, and you get like transported into, like, if you're really trying to observe like somebody as a musician, you feel like you're placed in the seat right next to them, and you can see them like play. Like I can see where they're hitting the kick, I can see where they're hitting the snare. I'm sure like you could imagine like where his fingers are placed on the guitar and like how you can make that yourself. And it just, after you're visualizing that, it becomes like a question: why did they make that artistic choice? And then it, like, all the pieces just start locking in. Like,
Right.
There's a build-up. What led into the build-up? It was a like quiet moment to pull you in. Build-up starts, they break, and then all hell breaks loose. I mean, I don't know, you know.
That's exactly what I thought you were just gonna say. Yeah, and that's when I love it, when a song can take you on a ride like that.
Yeah.
And it's funny you should say that, because just before you guys were coming in, Seth and I were talking about how important it is to be able to stay in the piece of art that you're trying to be a part of, whether or not it's a piece of music or a book you're reading or whatever. It's when you can feel, like you said, like you're sitting next to the person, or you can imagine yourself in it physically or otherwise.
Yeah.
So that begs the question. I'm totally going to mission drift here, and it would be cool if you could both answer this. What do you think, especially being songwriter focused, what do you think are some of the most important things to invite and keep a listener in the story you're telling, so they can experience that stuff you were just saying?
You want to go first?
Oh,
You think you got this?
buddy. I think what I try to do is this is going to sound a little more formulaic than it actually is, because it's actually pretty native, but like I try to make a drum beat that is catchy enough, like the chorus is. I could end up doing something technical on a technical part, or on the chorus, but it will never fit. You have to write music that works and fits. It involves listening to the lyrics, even though, like, when we're practicing, I can't hear what he's saying. I can't hear what he's saying at all. I don't know what the lyrics are, but I can get, like, the general emotion, the flow, all of that, and you have to really listen to each other. And I think when people really get it is when the music mirrors how we listen to each other and how we appreciate each other enough to make space for each other.
Ah, good point. Good observation.
No, I think definitely too. I've learned so much culturally about not just drums, but just where you come from, just from the way you play and the way that you interact and the way that you explain things to me. And just by the nature of your drumming, it's very characteristic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Not to glaze you, but
no, same with like the note choices that they do on guitar or bass. Like even Tyler, when he does the tapping on No Gods, like it's not the most complex thing that he can do, but it's the motif. It sets up the entire song structure, just him tapping on the bass, you know, it's great. It's great stuff.
Yeah, learning to serve the song collectively is a trick.
Yeah.
So what about you? What do you think makes a song accessible and keeps people in it?
What I think makes a song accessible and keeps people in it is just brutal honesty. So I feel like the most common thing we get from audience members and fans and friends is they love that my music makes them cry, or my music makes them angry, or the way that I write is evocative in that way. You know, like we were just talking to our friends. We played over this weekend at Crowbar at DIY Fest.
Yes.
Which was an amazing time with an amazing community we have. But one of our songs is No Gods, No Kings, No Fathers, which is about having an absent parent, and about the tribulations of being that kid that wants that relationship, that's missing that relationship, and really, really just living it through with a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very common feeling. We learn that every single time we play it, when we have these amazing conversations with people. And I am very much so a person who throws his whole body into things. It starts with spoken word. It just felt the most right thing to do, rather than trying to keep things to a rhythmic, like a melody. Just throwing yourself in there in that inviting way, and just speaking what we're feeling. That's really, really what gets us closer and connected with our friends and our family and people who enjoy our music. It's just being that level of, we're going to be vulnerable with you, and in return, a lot of times they're vulnerable with us. I've had so many conversations with people about the way that they grew up, the way that certain things have affected them, the way they've grown from it, the way they haven't grown from it.
Right.
And, you know, being able to relate to them there and be able to tell them, like, yeah, no, I still struggle with that daily. Or, yeah, no, it felt like shit, but when I finally got through it, I felt like $1 million.
Right. Well, you said the word that actually I was going to ask in my next question. At what point did you start to identify collectively, individually, finding strength and shared vulnerability?
So Tyler and I started playing together when we were in high school. And when we first started playing, it was more like indie rock music and stuff like that. But it's always been important to me that people not feel alone. Like, my favorite thing about music was those connections I get. I've gotten to understand wars through music, through stuff like System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine, like stuff that my little brain would have never really even comprehended ever.
Right.
I've gotten to understand what it's like to go through like a devastating breakup or lose the loss of a loved one. I think when we finally all came together, when we were a 4-piece, me, Jose, Sydney, and Tyler, I was sharing them my poetry, and usually a lot of our songs start out actually with lyrics first, and it's usually starting out with poetry. Just by my nature and the way that I've always been the kind of person that like will spill his guts if I think it will make you feel comfortable to do the same, if I think it will be helpful to do. Never really been ashamed to do that. I don't think anyone should ever feel ashamed to do that, and that's kind of just the mantra I live by.
Love that.
Yeah.
So like, you know, we get really, really into deep things. Like, one of our songs is called For All Lang Syne, which means for old time's sake. You know, it's a song that's sang at graduations. Was a Korean graduation anthem at one point. You can hear it when Harry Met Sally at the end when they play it for New Year's. But it's also a song that's played at funerals. It's a song about cherishing memories, and it's written in honor of my friend who passed away. And that is, you know, one of the heavier things that we really get into. It's hard.
It's still hard.
Yeah, but we always say it's our happiest song because in that spirit of singing it, it's a memory. It's a happy memory. It's like I'm with them again.
It's liberation and homage at once, almost. Yeah.
Yeah. It's my grandpa always said that you die 3 times. You die when your heart stops. You die when they put you in the ground, and you die when they say your name one last time. So it meant a lot for us that I can put into, I guess, an accessible way their name. You know, we say their name in the song, and we always give a little speech beforehand telling people, you know, just a little short story about how awesome they were, and it keeps things alive. And I think that kind of vulnerability is carried through a lot of our music in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's really strong and powerful to share that like that. So that I want to kind of cycle back a little bit. So you get to this place where everybody can be a little bit more hard on their sleeve, and your poetry being the impetus of a lot of things, I guess kind of sets that tone, because there is nothing more stark than here's my words just right here by themselves.
Yeah.
How do you develop the ability to listen to each other, like you said before, to give one another the space to be able to express these things, whether or not it's your guitar vocals or whether or not it's your drums? Is it something that you consciously do, or is it something that became over time through the four of you playing?
I think for me, it became something I consciously do, but now has become second nature, just because I was in so many bands, whether it be like auditioning for other bands or just jamming out with other musicians, and trying to find like a home, where you find that a lot of people are very opinionated in the sense that they want things their way, and there's, even if you are like the most accommodating person in the world, you'll do exactly what they say or whatever, it doesn't last at all.
Right.
There's no way in which an environment like that anybody can actually survive. And I think that's why, I mean, I don't know about other bands, but like you'll see a lot of turnover in bands and stuff, and eventually some of them will fizzle out and not continue. But I make a conscious effort to, like, if Sydney has an idea, we try out that idea, no matter how many times we have to do it in order for it to make sense, or if we have to like reimagine what it is. We're constantly trying to hear out everybody's idea, no matter how crazy, how outlandish. Even if it's not in the same genre, we do it. No matter what, we do it with 100% confidence.
So is some of that then like holding off or reserving the point of judging how this is working until it's working at all?
Yeah, pretty much.
I would say so. Yeah. Sometimes it's I mean, sometimes like we play something and we're like there's moments in my head where I'm like, oh, this is gonna sound so cool. I explain it, and as soon as it leaves my mouth, I'm like, what am I talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good in my head.
And it's and it's funny because everyone will give me the same like that. I'm like, and you know, sometimes I'm like, okay, no, that was stupid. I don't know why I said that. And sometimes I'm like, I know it sounds really stupid, but can we try it? Like, can we like that?
Well, that's the beauty of it, where you can say that and know that they're not going to be like, no, dude, we don't want to.
I don't think no one would ever say no. If one of us wanted to do something and maybe it was a little out of our wheelhouse or stuff, like we're friends and family first. You know, we're always holding each other up. And in the same way, like that's what our favorite thing is about this scene that we're in right now. Like we're obviously we play a lot in Tampa, but even over in Bradenton and Sarasota and Orlando, you find these people that are just like that. They're not even in your bands, and you're like chatting them about music you might be creating, chatting with them about something new you might just be trying in your life, and they're so behind you and so willing to push you forward and into an area where you're exploring new things.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Not to date myself too much, but I definitely come from an era where a lot of the band world reeked of competition, and everybody was cool with each other, and we definitely all support each other. But at the end of the day, somebody was going to succeed and somebody wasn't, and everyone knew it. Yeah. Now I feel like the vibe is so much more communal and so much more, like you said, everybody's willing, almost instantly willing to champion one another. Do you feel like something particularly changed that, or there is some air about it where there's more camaraderie amongst the music scene now, especially coming off DIY Fest, where it was just looked like camaraderie overload?
I like we had little conversations in Microgroove over in Tampa, which is a record store owned by one of the members of Pogo.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they're awesome people, and they let us shoot some promotional videos with some of the bands for DIY Fest. And one of the questions they asked us was what got us in the music scene. And for me, it was one of the first real shows I went to was in honor of a musician who had cancer at the time, and he was a really big integral part of the community. His name was Michael. He had a band called Old Bones, and he had played with a lot of the other musicians around and worked at Guitar Center and was just like this huge cornerstone. They threw a benefit show for him that I believe they said they raised about $8,000 for some of his treatment. And like it just makes sense, like that you have all these people who will always have your back no matter what you're going through, whether it's your happy days, your sad days, you know, whether you're at the top of the world or you're, you know, really, really struggling. The community's always been like that in Tampa. There's this like DIY punk aspect to it.
Yes.
Where it is all about each other and all about celebrating together. Music, that includes our photographers and vendors and
absolutely
people working the doors, people organizing shows. Like the amount of work that goes into all of that is not just on the shoulders of musicians. I think a lot of times musicians, it's easy to obviously take the spotlight because you're the one standing under the spotlight. But the people who make us look good, like our photographers, the people that help keep shows organized, like our bookers and our door people, they're just a part of everything as we are.
So do you think it was a realization, a more collective realization that it takes a village and that...
It takes a village in keeping this alive. It also takes... what I think is what a lot of musicians took for granted was when all the venues started drying up and going away, the gentrification of Ybor and Tampa, like all of that going away really sparked this love for community and music again. And I really think we're on the up and ups, like actually... Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
So I guess that is sort of some of the being creative in a time like we live in, too. There has to be, you know, it is almost somewhat incumbent upon people who have the desire to be creative to actually do it, to push against some of those things, because it's clearly been shown if we don't hold the line, they will push it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every inch they take a mile.
Yeah.
And obviously... You probably see it down here in Sarasota just as much as we see it. Gentrification itself has eaten away at culture, eaten away at history, eaten away at love and art and the vibrant things that really, really keep people coming to these places. And they're even placed with office spaces and franchises and just like we think about Crowbar, which is going to be closing in a year. And there's really, venue-wise, there's not a lot of those like middle ground places like...
Yes, exactly. Talk about that, the hollowing out of the middle ground. That's a big thing.
Yeah. It's easy to get, like, the small venues that have, like, quick turnovers, like, those, they pop up and they fizzle out, like, all the time. The middle ground, they are such a staple in the scene, and a lot of them are drying out. It's like, what do you have besides, like, an entry-level... gig that only has like room for like 20 people
and a stage
and
that's
like,
high off the ground and a shitty PA and no lights and the whole Megillah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like every venue where I started playing music at is gone. Every single one of them.
Jesus, you're not that old.
No, I think that's the scary thing.
That's a scary thing.
I just turned 25, and I'm talking 5 or 6 different venues, of which I got my foot in the door and was able to actually become a part of the community through these venues are all gone. One of the venues that I hold nearest and dear in my heart is the Crowbar. Like in 2018, me and Tyler skipped prom to go see Japanese Breakfast play there. Japanese Breakfast and Snail Mail. And it was such a...
and without venues like that show doesn't exist.
No, absolutely not. And at that point in both of their careers, like... where else were they going to go? Because they weren't going to fit into the Ritz.
Right, exactly.
They weren't going to fit into areas like that. Like, you know, we see this all over the country. Is this Live Nation, Ticketmaster cannibalization of these venues, trying to turn over a profit on any sort of way, and for these venues is nigh impossible. Making a profit is a dream if you make even close to what you're supposed to survive. They're not making,
just breaking even is hard.
Well, they're not even making anywhere near what they were making 5 years ago before COVID really allowed these sentiments to be cemented. that the small venues don't matter.
Yeah, that was a weird time of a shifting and swallowing up of things. But let me press rewind a little bit, because I definitely want to get up to that point where you guys are starting to play more in the state of affairs now. But take me back to high school and when you first start playing, like you said, when you get your foot in the door. Take me back to some of these first rehearsals, some of these first gigs, what you're thinking, what that was like. What's the line between, excitement and fear, anticipation and dread? The whole thing that goes into the beginning of the storm.
So Tyler and I started playing music when we were about junior year. Tyler was in orchestra, and Tyler's like very tall, skinnier, kind of a slender figure. He'd always carry this huge ass fucking cello everywhere, and it would take up the whole hallway. And
comic book style.
Yeah, and the thing was, like, he was not a slow guy, so he's like he'd be trucking through the hallways with this huge truckload on his back. And we had English class together, and he was always the funniest guy I ever known, one of the smartest guys I ever known, and one of the best artists I ever known. He'd always draw. And he would draw the most, like, obscene things and just to make everyone laugh. But I was like, me and my other best friend, we wanted to make music and stuff like that. So we saw Tyler with this huge cello, and I asked the obvious question. I was like, hey, man, do you play bass? And he said, no, I just play cello. And I was like, if I gave you my old bass guitar, would you learn bass? And he said, yeah. I was like, would you play with me and just jam out? You don't even have to, like, play in a band with me if you would just jam with me a few times. And he said, yeah. Gave him one of my old basses.
That's awesome. Willingness.
Yeah. He honestly, like, I'm one of those guys where if, like, someone asked me for $5, I'd give you $5. But someone like Tyler, I'd give you a bass. I'd give you a hug. I'd be there for you the whole ride if you just let me. So we started playing our first shows were for our school, I think naturally. And there was only really like 2 bands inside our school at that time. We were playing in my grandpa's shed for a while, which had no EC, and which in Florida we were basically sauna. Keeping ourselves slender.
That's earning it.
It was deadly. It was deadly.
It was crazy. But my grandpa would make us like fries and like a bunch of food afterwards and stuff like that. So it was kind of worth it.
So good, like peanut oil deep fried fries. Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
But then for a while, I actually ended up playing music by myself. Just Tyler's schedule and everyone else's schedule kind of fell off. And I think that's when I started playing by myself. Is when I started going under the name He Kindly. Just also nerdy thing. It was just off of the Emily Dickinson poem of because I could not stop for deaf, he kindly stopped for me, and that was just kind of like the kind of guy I was, where I was just all about poetry and being that. But
and when you read that line, did it hit you? That's for me, or was that one in the back pocket and you applied it to that because it started to feel like that?
A lot of Emily Dickinson's poetry, she lived in this balance of believing in God and believing that God was never there for her. And a lot of her poetry hits on those notes of both secular and religion, and religious trauma and religious glory. And at the time, I was going to church, but I felt that same exact way, where I was like, there's this thing that I'm being told exists that loves me and cares about me, and I am a person who's living with, panic disorder, with anxiety disorder, all this stuff is just scaring the shit out of me. To the point where I left the church. But a lot of her poetry spoke to me in that way. But it was that same thing about getting up on stage. I used to play in worship and stuff like that, so I got really comfortable being on stage. But it started to feel, at first it was awkward because you're used to playing towards something that supposedly is huge and way on, that created you and created everything around you, and it's like this immense pressure of that. Just going in front of a crowd and playing some music that's about, I used to play music that was like about Twilight Zone and all this other like pop culture stuff. That felt like small potatoes.
And were you doing it singer, songwriter, acoustic guitar and vocals?
I was doing guitar and vocals, just guitar, because I'm really big I'm like wearing her shirt, but Julian Baker, where it's just that like small little indie person pouring their heart out kind of thing. I think like one of the shows I got most nervous about ever was the first time we played Crowbar, because it was that like connection of like, like holy shit, like this is like what I've been wanting to do since I stepped foot in here. Like this is it. Like this is like what it feels like to get to like step up a little bit and feel like you're comfortable doing that too. I remember I almost had a panic attack, and Tyler had to calm me down because I was quite literally freaking out. And he's always been so good about that, and my band's like always been so good about being there for me when I'm like that.
Yeah, that's an awesome through line, having a community of people that can be there for you.
Yeah,
and I mean we have that all over. I feel like if I had a panic attack on stage, I feel like the audience wouldn't just be like, ooh.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like they would. I feel like they would be there for me, and I think anyone aspiring to get into the community we have, that's one thing they don't have to worry about. Is they don't have to worry about like Lewis fell on stage this last time we played, and he got back up, and everyone's laughing and but not laughing at him, just laughing with him. It's like it's a shared moment. There's so many shared moments that I think a lot of these newer musicians that are going to be getting into the scene, whether they're young or whether they started later in life, they're going to recognize that within Florida and within Tampa especially, we have each other's backs.
Yeah, that's powerful. Well, the shared moment thing, I guess, is the backbone of that. And I feel like, with all the big shows and big productions out there, God love them, they're super fun. I love Slipknot. I've seen them a bunch. I love, a big produced show. But there is something to be said for those middle ground venues, not to get back to that one, but where you can have that shared moment like you're on the cusp of something happening, you know? And I imagine this weekend was a lot of that, feeling one another's momentum.
Yeah, one of our good friends over in Bradenton, their band called Spanish Bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Amazing little punk band. They will if you're ever a fan of that kind of era, or you're a fan of newer stuff like modern baseball, they bring you right back there. Sweetest people I know. Mm-hmm. There was their first time playing Crowbar, and you would have thought they were playing like the rocks in Colorado, or they were playing in space down to the entirety of Earth.
But super comfortable on stage.
Super comfortable on stage, but their excitement was so palpable. And they're younger than us at least.
Yeah.
And Pogo was also our headliner, and their lead singer of Spanish Bombs, huge Pogo fan. So he's already over the moon about that. But not only was he over the moon about the fact he gets to see one of his favorite bands, but he gets to share a stage with them. And it's hours apart and stuff like that, but I felt like if I put my finger on his vein, my hand would jump back off. He was so excited.
Yeah, and that sort of thing matters, and I think people sometimes forget that, where how deep inspiration can run for some people with some things that might seem meaningless to somebody else or just something in passing. One thing I wanted to ask you was, when you started playing by yourself before you transition and Tyler comes back and the band starts to build, did you see that as the fullest evolution of doing poetry? Here I can do my words with a little bit of music and I'm self-contained?
That's a good question.
I would say actually no. I think my ability to just be able to send lyrics to Jose, send lyrics to Sydney, send lyrics to Riley, send lyrics to Tyler, and tell them what I'm going for. This is where I'm at, and just get the feedback that's just honest. Sometimes Sydney's usually the one to tell me it when I'm oversharing.
Someone has to be the one.
Yeah. Someone's not that this is bad, but this is too much. And because a lot of times our goal is again to share things in the hopes that someone shares something back. And not that we're never afraid to trauma dump. We're really not afraid to just let it all out. But I think being able to kind of hone that in and allow it to be something that's palpable, consumable, you can digest it, you can think about it, and it's not anything distracting from the fact that there's a core message to something.
Right.
I think when I was by myself, I allowed myself to just do whatever I want. But doing whatever I want is cool and all, but the creative limitations breeds more creativity, I think. And having my family of a band be right there and understand what I'm going through, and then translate that into what they're doing, and we can have this conversation of all right, we want to have this have a guitar part here. What does that look like when we're talking about the death of a close friend? What does that look like when we talk about my dad leaving? What does that look like when we're talking about Tyler and his relationship with his dad? What does that look like when we're talking about my trans sibling? And this angry world that doesn't want them to exist.
Right.
What does that look like?
What does it sound like?
And I guess and that's one thing that Jose's always been amazing at. I mean, everyone's really, really amazing at it too. But I think some people think about drums and they think about more dance drums or technical drums. But Jose says that he writes catchy drums, but he really strikes the emotion of what I'm feeling and what like really is going through my heart, and what I'm really like physically feeling throughout my body. That's like one of my favorite things you've always been able to do.
Thank you. I think you can tell when me and Isaiah not write lyrics together, but when you share lyrics to me and I always go, I like this and like I like this, it's when you have something super abstract and like you don't know where the point is going, and then you have the point thrown right in your face in bold lyrics, like this is what the song is about. There's no mistakes about it. And we do that on a couple songs that I like a lot.
So it was one of the things that you noticed then or maybe one of the things you were longing for, that having the band re-solidified, is that when you're by yourself, you can be as great as you can be, and you don't have to have anybody tell you what you can or can't do. We're just going to do it for better or for worse. But when you have the band around, it sounds like you guys are all pretty keenly aware that the real feeling is being greater than the sum of your parts.
Yeah.
Was that something that was evident to you right away?
I think yes and no. Like when me and Tyler first got back with Jose and started playing with Jose again, it was kind of like that like mystery ground. Like we were friends in high school, we knew each other that way. Mm-hmm. If things weren't working out and stuff like that, I'm sure we would all have a conversation about it. We're all super open about it.
But everything seemed to work.
Everything seemed to work, and then not only that, everything continued to work.
But did you have that feeling? How immediately evident to you was it, the feeling where it's like, wait a minute, I'm better, we're all better together than this was for me when I was by myself and I didn't have any check or balance?
I think that was For All Lang Syne for me. When we were writing For All Lang Syne and getting down to it, and like I'm like, they're having to deal with me crying during practice. Like we're trying to rehearse a song and I'm just crying, and they're all there to give me a hug and be there for me. And not only that, but get down to the bare bones of everything, to what we're singing about. I think that was the moment that for me made it completely evident that everyone I was working with was bombastically and unapologetically right there with me.
And it fit together so perfectly. Like that was probably the only song where we did not really like have to come up with different parts, or like we're trying a bunch of different stuff. Everything fell into place. What we played on the very first like jam session when we were just jamming it out is pretty true to what was recorded. Like it was a very seamless, smooth process of just, this is what we wrote. And that's when it really clicked and we were like, this is perfect.
Love that. Yeah, those moments are impossible to manufacture, and so amazing when you can catch them. So you guys said before you're not afraid to trauma dump, and I know that. I love that term. I'm totally going to steal that wherever it came from. I'm going to work that one into my vernacular. But I guess that touches on the catharsis of being a musician. You can get things out that you couldn't otherwise. And we've lately had a couple guests in that have really been touching on that, and it's been making me extra curious about how you both feel that being able to make music, whether or not you're practicing, playing in your rehearsal space, or on stage, affects you as the person you are outside of your creative endeavor.
I don't think it affects us outside. I think really it's just what we truly are. Our emotions and everything on the outside just gets streamlined straight into music. I mean more like how much worse would a bad day be if you weren't a musician, and how much less good would a good day be if you weren't a musician?
I think an easy answer to that question is the last time we played at New World Tampa. We're ending our set with For All Lang Syne. I am a sobbing mess. This last month, I lost a close friend of mine.
Sorry.
Yeah. He was a photographer for us. He was amazing. My friend Richard meant the world to me. Super sweet guy, and his work was, I couldn't even explain how beautiful his photography was. we were playing For Lang Syne, and this time we're playing it, and I'm talking about how I hate that I'm dedicating another song just to someone that I lost.
Right.
I don't want to. I never want to dedicate another song to anyone else. It's just because I don't want to lose anyone else. I'm too much.
Unless they're getting married or having a baby.
Yeah. I'm too much of a coward to see someone pass. I just don't have it in me. But I get off stage, and one of the other bands, Gloomchild, played before us. And Tom Kelly from Gloomchild is talking to me, and he's like, "How old are you?" I'm 20 whatever. And he's like, he shares with me that he lost his best friend when he was 21. That he himself, struggled with these thoughts of not living anymore. And I start crying all over again. And I asked him for a story about his friend, and he shares a story about his friend, and he shares a story about himself. I share a story about my friend. And the fact he says it was one of the first times forever he listened to music and it felt like art. But I think what we were kind of getting at was that hearing that reminded him of something in a good way, and playing it reminded me of something in a good way. And he and I would never, I would never open up to him about like my thoughts about suicide, my thoughts about self-harm, my thoughts about being scared to walk out of the door. I get so terrified. Like I've recently been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Sometimes I don't trust the people around me. Sometimes I don't think clearly. Would never have talked to this person ever about it. But because we're so open on stage, and because it's part of who we are as musicians, we're so easy to connect through that. I had a conversation that I needed to have. Like it kept me safe for the night.
I was going to say it literally provides a path of healing in real time sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for sharing that, because that's exactly what I'm curious about. Because I think sometimes people forget, like, this isn't all we're just trying to make our art and put ourselves on stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate hearing that part, because I think that's the important portion of the show, by my own humble judgment.
Oh, yeah.
So let's try. Let me get on a little bit lighter side of this. Tell me where you're at now with writing and recording. Did you just had a single out not that long ago?
The last stuff we released was in November.
Okay.
But we're working on Locust right now, which is, I guess, our most politically charged stuff we've written in a while.
And this is an EP, LP, or this is a particular
we're working
song?
on a single, but we're working on a collection of songs right now.
Yeah, we don't know whether to have it as an album or just release songs.
Yeah, we're still feeling that out. But Locust is what we're recording on right now. This month we're going to be putting the finishing touches on it, and then going to work on getting ready stuff for distribution and stuff like that. We're working with Knucklehead Studios over in Spring Hill with Corey Gracie. Amazing guy. Our last stuff we recorded with Clear Track with Stephen Clark.
Nice, beautiful studio.
Beautiful studio, beautiful person. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stephen did an amazing job. It was just more of a practicality of closeness.
Right.
We live in Spring Hill, so Corey's right there with us, and we're able to work in a way that's a little bit more, I guess, fluid with the way we work. But I don't know. Do you want to get in the brass tacks about Locust a little bit?
I mean, you touched on it earlier. It's about your
It's about my sibling MJ.
Yeah, I don't know how to exactly talk about this.
I guess I could say, do you want to tell the story that I told? It's about my sibling MJ. Tyler and I played a pride parade one year, and my mom was there, and my sibling MJ was there. And there were counter protesters there, and they were working their way to the front of the crowd. And during our set, they were screaming, obscene things and calling us all kinds of the worst things you can imagine. And my mom started getting in their face, and they started calling my mom a pedophile and a groomer and all the worst things you could think of. And like there's my sibling MJ just like with their fan and stuff like that, like still just smiling and laughing at the situation going on, because that's always just the kind of person they are. So Locust is just a song about them and like Tyler's fiance's brother is trans as well, and a song about our relationship as well. It's about queer joy. It's about the fact that people will never fucking take that shit away from us. That we will always have this pride that queer joy itself is an act of resistance. That we live in a world that maybe sucks in a lot of conceivable ways, but doesn't suck in a lot of conceivable ways. I get to wake up and see my sibling and their beautiful smile, and see them express themselves in a beautiful way. Get to see my friend Ben be the exact person he was meant to be.
Gratitude is a powerful force of opposition.
Yes, yes. Like I've always said, nothing gets someone cruel more mad than to see you happy.
Yes, absolutely.
So just living your best life and living to your truth is all that Locust is about.
Yeah. Well, personal freedom is a thing we definitely have to remind each other we have sometime. I don't know what the hell happened, but
I don't know what makes, some people think that you can impose your version of freedom on someone else. Like, it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. It's just let people live the way they want to live.
We have a funny position with our band because I'm Black, Tyler's Cambodian, Jose's Puerto Rican, Riley and I both identify as queer, and we always say Sydney's just Sydney, but Sydney's our female lead guitarist, which, she's
not allowed out there.
I always call her the standard because it's not the fact that she's a female that makes her amazing; it's the fact that she is who she is. But the fact that she gets the opportunity to amplify a voice that is also a minority is just super important.
Yeah, well, I think, you guys make a good point. We can all exist on potentially an infinite continuum, and art is a good way to represent that.
Yeah.
We don't sense art as one of those things that even the harshest of critics will see that it is subjective. Mm-hmm. It allows the continuum of what's right and what's good to be open-ended. So you guys mentioned something that I like to ask people about. It's been a minute since I've been able to ask this one. How do you feel? What's the conversation like when you got a song like this? You're feeling good about it. It's got a good backbone. There's some momentum here. And you have to have the band talk of, do we write an EP? Do we just put out a single? What do we do because of the state of affairs of having to make sure you're constantly fresh in everyone's purview? What is that conversation like?
I mean, you asked the question before about what's it like to interact with the fact that we're so online now.
Yeah.
For us, we're allowing it to shape a little bit of what we're doing a little bit more. We're so blessed and so lucky to have so many people in the community that we can feast on their intelligence on that stuff. I don't think a single one of us is what I would call tech savvy. As far as it goes to,
I love the immediate shake the head. No.
He reads the instruction manuals for the stuff that I get.
Yeah, I'm
to explain it to me.
If you hand me something that I can physically hold in my hand, I will read a manual on it and learn how to use it. Yeah. If you give me a manual that says this is how you get followers on Instagram, I'll read it and then be like, which one's the like button again? I'm completely oblivious to it. We're all kind of like that. It's just not natural to us. But we are lucky that there are people who it is natural to, and we can lean on them, and they lean on us for the stuff that's natural to us, and it's what a beautiful concept.
Yeah, right.
For us, though, we are looking to start recording a bulk of music, and then when we have 3 songs ready, well, that's when we'll release 1 song. And just releasing a song at a time every month and a half to 2 months. So, with very, very targeted imagery. We working with our photographer PH and Lexi. There are our two main photographers for our band, and working to create some concepts and working to bolster up the singles to give each one of them their own chance. But releasing it over a period of time, and then when we have a collection, releasing it as a collection.
Do you feel like that's something that is just so obviously the most advantageous that you don't have a choice?
Yeah, there is no choice right now. I think the fact that there's, we're lucky that there's however many tens of thousands of songs released a day. That's tens of thousands of choices or chances to find your next favorite song.
Yeah.
Awesome. When Spotify delivers it to you.
Right.
When Apple Music decides that it's going to put it in your algorithm, when it literally just decides that your new favorite song is something you get to listen to.
Right.
And we're all at that mercy. You used to be able to walk into a shop like Microgroove and listen to them playing something on their record player and be like, that's it. I'm going to buy that record. or walk in there and physically hold a vinyl and be like, this artwork, whoever designed this artwork, it's so cool. I need to listen to this band. You used to be able to walk into small venues and hear someone playing music and walk over to their table and buy a piece of physical media.
Right.
But I think every band during DIY Fest and every show I've gone to, I think since forever, you have to shout out your Spotify. You have to shout out your Instagram. We have to give our handles. We have to have a digital presence while we're in the flesh.
Oy.
And we got to do it. It's work. Like it's work like anything else. Like if you're an electrician, you got to learn your wiring. You got to learn how to use conductors. You got to learn how to do all this stuff in order to succeed. I think.
Yeah, and you got to learn how to sell yourself. Like, as much as it sucks to, no one wants to sell out, but you do, in a sense, do have to sell like what your personality is. Even if it's just to like show them, hey, this is what we are.
Right.
It is the minutia of like, hey, this is what we are all the time, and just reminding them in social media like this is us. We're still here.
Yeah, because our approach is keeping it simple. Like we're mental health focused people. We're community focused people. We're political, and we definitely wear who we are on our sleeve. To the point where it's easy for us to maintain the fact that we are who we are. When we think about brands, it feels so like I feel like brand's such a disgusting word sometimes. But brand doesn't have to be a disgusting word. It doesn't have to be something that's so like counter to music. And I think a lot of bands find that for themselves, that works for them. You see bands that aren't signed by Sony make it all the time. And, we're all just working to be right there with them.
Right. Yeah, and making it now is a sliding scale, too.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, now you can have a small, loyal fan base and not have to live in obscurity.
Yeah.
Right.
But that begs the question, this will be my hard one, and then we'll get you out of here on something fun. You mentioned that you're not necessarily, you don't desire to be the most techie people, though you've learned to have to do it because I love your analogy of the electrician needs to know all of his things. When I ask most people what their biggest challenge is in getting their music out there, a lot of people will have an answer that somewhat hovers around Spotify has 160,000 new songs a day. But you already covered that part, and you don't see that as a bad thing, and I love that. I love that twist on that. I think, there has to be some other side to that coin, so it was cool that you vocalized that. So if that's not the thing you would see as the biggest hiccup, what do you see as the biggest challenge of getting your music out there in a landscape that is, for better or for worse, flooded?
I think the biggest obstacle is that fear to ask the people around you for help. We all are kind of embarrassed to be like, I don't know how to work with the system. Like, I don't know how to work in this ecosystem where I have to be digitally online in order to get people to listen to my music. Again, but you see these bands that do know how to do it. You see these bands that have success around you. And I think the awesome thing is every community has these bands. And if they're communities like our community, those bands are so easy to approach and so easy to ask. But it's scary to do it the first time. I think the biggest obstacle is that, just being willing to be talked to like a 5-year-old sometimes. I need to be talked to like a 5-year-old a lot of the times. Like these things that I don't understand, I can talk to Lewis from Discord Theory, and he will sit down with me. He'll give me his time, the most valuable thing we all have, to explain it to me. I can just reach out to a band that's doing well that might be similar to us and be like, hey, what can I learn from you? What is it that you're doing that got you to this point? Because I admire you so much that I want to get to that point. And I think I noticed that with a lot of younger bands. They might ask us questions and stuff like that, and I always appreciate it. But the bands that get around to things quicker are the ones that aren't afraid to ask the people around them for help.
And then huge shout outs to everybody who ain't gatekeeping.
Yeah. Right,
exactly. And that's something that you introduced me to in my first show when we played the Orpheum. Was my first show with He Kindly, and I noticed the old drummer of the Baby Chimps. They were the Baby Chimps at the time, and then they turned into Diver Down, Easton Morgan. I was like, man, that guy's snare drum sounds so insane. I got to know how he tunes it. And then Isaiah was like, why don't you go ask him? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It seemed like they had more of a following than us. I was like, I don't think he wants to talk to me. And he goes, go help him take his gear off stage and then talk to him. And I was like, is that easy? And he was like, yeah, it's that easy. And it is that easy. Like, he just told me exactly how he tunes his snare. He's got no actual like method. He's just like, keep it tabletop tight on the bottom and close to that on the top, and that's it.
And just like literally implying that to like online. Like, like I can ask Lewis and be like, Lewis, you guys have traction here. Like, what can we do better? And his answer is stuff like content. Like here's the content I make. This is how I make it. Like, it's not hard to do. It's a little embarrassing. You have to sometimes be in public with a camera on you, and it's like people walking around like, what the fuck is this dork doing? Yeah. You just got to swallow it sometimes.
What's the worst they can say? No? Or I hate your guts? Well, if they say that, then, they're probably not going to survive as well.
Survive? We're gonna take
no, I mean, no. Like, with that attitude,
No, I get you.
That's no way to act.
Yeah, cooperation is akin to oxygen in lots of music scenes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's very cool, and that was an unexpected answer. I like that. Okay, so let's get you out of here on something fun. Okay. I normally ask people this question, not because, this is how I preface it, not because I want to know what your favorite bands are, but because I always like to give people who are getting introduced to you for the first time some kind of frame of reference of where you see your music sitting best in a presentation. So if you guys could each pick a band that you would put on a bill with He Kindly, who would you play with and where would you play at? And I don't care. It could be the Beatles on the moon. You have complete carte blanche in the answer.
Man, for me, music venue wise, I've always been drawn to Red Rocks.
Nice.
Like, I love just the backdrop of the mountain just being right back here, the seating, the stadium seating, and all that. And you don't have to be like the biggest band in the world to play at Red Rocks. There's been a bunch of smaller, mid-size, but just experienced bands.
Right.
And I feel like, I think that's where I would be happy. It's just being an experienced band that's been there for a while. You can live comfortably. You can go to a place and maybe nobody recognizes you. And that's a beautiful thing.
Who with though, big guy?
Who with?
Yeah.
Pierce the Veil.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
We could play.
Yeah, you got me.
We could play with Pierce the Veil.
Sure.
I feel like they're on that same level. Their experience, they've got it. They can walk around in Tampa probably and not everybody recognize them, even though they're the biggest band in my heart. Like,
love that.
We could play with Loathe even. We could play with, I don't know, just any.
It's your dream.
Yeah, it's your dream, dude. We could play with anyone. Ever.
Yeah.
The Beatles on the moon.
Yeah.
At Red Rocks. No, I'm just kidding. What do you
Red
think?
Rocks with Pierce the Veil. I like that.
Pierce the Veil. I think I'll be lame and continue to my stretch of the fact that I love this community. I would say it's closing in a year. I'd love to play Crowbar again with someone like Law Dispute. Which is just another band that incorporates a lot of spoken word and a lot of stuff about mental health and a lot of stories of mental fatigue, really, in a small, intimate venue that deserves to stay alive.
Very cool.
That is really cool.
I hope that I get to see you guys do both of those shows. Isaiah, Jose, I can't thank you guys enough.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful you came down, made some time to talk to us and introduce everybody to your band. I can't wait to catch you guys live, and you're K the family now, so welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, man.